Hey art friends! Today we're talking about something every watercolor artist needs to know. The best paper for watercolor painting. Trust me, using the wrong paper can completely change your results. So why does paper matter? Because watercolor paper isn't just for holding the paint. It also affects absorption, blending, and vibrancy. Regular paper can buckle as we start adding on more colors, versus the thicker watercolor paper lets you just glide smoothly without any buckling or binding of it, and it allows the water to move and play with the design a lot longer. If you have if you're doing wet on wet techniques, especially where you first lay down, let me get a bigger brush here. When you first lay down some water on your page so you can get some of the nice blooms and things, you'll notice that with the regular paper, it just sits on top and then all of a sudden it's through the page. So I don't know if you can see the little shine there, but it's still dripping. And those drips are running all over the paper. Whereas on the watercolor paper, you have the watercolor shine, but it's not running anywhere. It's staying right where we put it, which is what we want. So if we were to dot in some colors and make beautiful little blooms with our pages, we can see the difference of what it does. There we go. I can see on this one where I touched for my wet on wet. But you can see the difference in these blooms making beautiful little lines and crevices. And that's because of the tooth of the paper. So typically basic copier paper is very smooth. There's no roughness, no texture. Whereas watercolor has two different textures. One, like I'm using here, which is cold pressed. So it has a little bit of tooth. You can actually see the tooth of it. And the other one is hot pressed, which is a little bit smoother. And it doesn't grab the paints like the cold press has. Unfortunately, I do not have any more hot pressed paper to show you, but I do have all cold pressed in my grouping. So cold press is just, it's a slightly textured, and this is most used by beginners because it really gives up, the ability to have lines where you want them, to be able to get paint on the paper nice and easily and smooth, versus the regular paper that you can already see is buckling up. It's already lifted up off the table here for me, and it's really kind of grayish all over, if you can see that, versus my watercolor paper that is nice and smooth. And this is a good entry-level paper for a lot of people because this is from Strathmore. Okay. There's also is a rough that you can get. So if you want a highly expressive, or you're going for bold strokes of your painting, then it may be good for you to use that rough texture, more an abstract watercolor, so it really moves around the page. And so in addition to knowing what type of paper, what it's made of is also important. Good watercolor paper is 100% cotton. All right, so this is very important. As you get more and more paint onto the page, cotton will absorb and dry beautifully for your colors. We can even go back and touch. So you can do wet on wet even with colors here too. I just like having fun painting and seeing the different valleys and things that happens there. Whereas when I start trying to do this over here, it's already starting to buckle. on the page. Okay. And then when I go back, it buckles even more and more. It doesn't lay good on the plain regular printer paper. Okay. But when it comes to the pages themselves, you can get individual sheets that are, 8.5 by 11. You can get 9 by 11, 11 by 14. There's really everything in the sizes when it comes to papers. So I have a couple of papers here to show you the different styles that we have. The first one, the most common, is the Strathmore watercolors. You could see on here, it says that specifically for watercolors, it's watercolor paper cold press. So you always want to look for, depending on the type of painting you want to do, you want to look for that cold or hot pressed paper. It will tell you also how many sheets are in this pack, the size of it, which is 9 by 12, and the weight of the paper. You can see this is 140 pound. That's important to know the weight of the papers. Regular copier paper is 20, sometimes 24 pounds thick. So it's relatively thin versus the watercolor paper that is quite a bit thicker than that. So this one is 140. And you can tell by the way that it bends and smooths and stuff. You may have heard of things like cardstock, but be careful by just saying cardstock because that can be 67 pounds in some things. Okay. So this watercolor paper that I just used today comes in a pack, and you would typically break out the sheet, and then mask the edges to make a nice frame and paint it separately. When you purchase your paper, like a block, okay, this is a very small 5 by 7 block of paper. And the reason this is a block is because if I open it up, you'll notice that there is glue along this edge, and each of the edges there is glue. This is really good if you're going to be doing a single seating and then you're able to let things dry, or you're trying to do this like a postcard. You can read on the front that it's also 5 by 7. It's pure cotton watercolor paper. There's 20 sheets, and you can see that this right here says 100% cotton. Okay. So again, that's really important to look for that. Now, you might be asking, okay, that's in a block. How do I get it off? And the way you get this off is with a palette knife or any straight item you may have. Okay, so I have a plastic palette knife, and what you do is on the back, it'll have a spot where it says open. Okay, so once you're done painting, then you come back here and you insert a palette knife between these spots. So you'll see it's glued here and it's glued here. But I can put a palette knife inside or a letter opener. Just be careful you don't poke it through the paper. And then you can see I'm just going to go around the page, and it just slightly lifts it right up off that glue. Take your time around the corners so you don't ruin the edges. And then our page will be free, so we can go put it into a frame or mail it to a friend. Okay. So that's how you use pad of paper. And I do like the pads because it does give it a very sturdy feel. It keeps the paper in place easier. And I can still mask around it while it's still here. So it really prevents any possible warping. So if you're doing a watercolor painting where you're using a lot of wet on wet techniques and multiple layers, you're going to want to use a pad for those paintings. It really helps instead of having to pre-stretch your canvas. Okay. Now this one is similar to the Strathmore that I've been using, just in a smaller format. The other difference is the series. So you see 400 series here, and this one shows 300 series. That's going to be a little bit of difference in the quality. So as Strathmore goes down in numbers, it's a lower level of quality. So it has a 300 series, which I think is really good for the beginner level. They also have a 400 series, and they do have a 500 series. I would only purchase the 500 series if you are doing it as a professional, because it's quite expensive. And if you're doing a lot of practicing and just working on beautiful colors for home use or even as gifts, the 300 has always done very well for me. And that's what a lot of people use if they're going to do smaller paintings. So this one, though, is actually a sketchbook. So it's 400. It's a hardbound. It's 140-pound pages. Okay, and there you go. And this is also cold pressed, so it's got the texture in it. But this you keep all together, so you can use this as your monthly sketchbook. So if you don't need the individual pages, this is what I like to do, is more journaling and things like that with the watercolors. This is also a good watercolor page. This is by Canson. And again, this can be used as a sketchbook. So you could do this all over. You can see here, it does say cold pressed. It's 7 by 10. It's 140 pounds. And it's 30 sheets in this spiral. So this is great when you're doing your sketchbook and you want to do a page a day for a month. You could have one of these for each month of your painting journey. This one does have the micro perforations. So if we wanted to, you can see that there's little dots there. So I can bend at that spot and take this out of the book. I recommend that you always fold it in both directions along the tear line, because sometimes I've had it where the perforation was not strong enough and I actually tore my page after I had painted it. So once you're done painting, just fold it back and forth on each side, and then you can tear out the page. These don't have as crisp of an edge as if it was in one of the pads. As you can see, it does create that little bit of extra that you would need to file down. But if you were putting this into a frame for someone as a gift, you wouldn't even see that edge. So it's still a good economical way to use watercolor paper. Most watercolor paper can be used also as mixed media paper. So some people like to do mixed media, and these papers are wonderful for that. Here's another one that's also a book. This one is watercolor. It says medium coarse grain, 230 grams. Okay, so we can use that as well. And that's just a bound journal. This one is some beautiful paper. I had another one that I used. This is high white. So this is a very, very bright white paper. A little bit brighter than your standard. Again though, 100% cotton, right? 300 gram weight, 140 pounds. Right? And again, this is a pad. And then the last one to show you, oh no, I got two more here. Fluid. This one I have not tried yet, but I've heard very good reviews on YouTube for it. And so I bought a pack of it. It's a cold press finish, 11 by 14, which is mostly the sizes that I do. Again, 140 pounds, so you don't want anything ever under 100 at all. And then 100% cotton. And that's really the key. Okay. And then we can see here, open it up. You can see how bright white this paper is. It's truly a beautiful page. This is good for, like, I like to do oceans. and have the waves with that frothy white, really comes out good with this bright white underneath. Looks really, really good. And then the last one, this is the one I hear most when they talk about professional pages, is Arches. So Arches is a really good quality. This is a fine grain, okay? 100 sheets, or 10 sheets, 10 by 14 inch. It's 100% cotton again. And this is a block, okay? Again, it's just like the first one where it will have glue all around the edges and then show that. Okay. So, again, some of the easiest ones are like that Canson XL. This journal is probably your most beginner-friendly level, okay? So this is really, if you're wanting to get started and you're just practicing, these are good if you want to do warm-up exercises. So a lot of times what I like to do is before I start painting my actual picture, I kind of get my hand used to painting again. And so that's where I can use these pages as nice practices. So I can come in with my round brush and just start making lines, learning control, doing waves, right? Trying to make a circle and fill it in. So this is really good when you get time to practice. You can use these books that are a little bit more economical. And like I said, I have one that I've already started that's pretty much filled out, right? So but you can do practice lines, you can do pressure testing, right? Just practice. That's where this is a great tool. And then again, the pro level Arches. If you're looking at, if you have a budget for it, you can purchase this. I do want you to be careful of where you purchase it from. Some people have bought it from the China sites like Temu, even eBay. And they say that it's Arches and it looks all real, but when you open it up and you feel it, it's definitely not 100% cotton feel or the thickness of the 300-pound paper. Okay, so be cautious. If you do buy Arches, make sure you're paying a premium price. If it's too cheap, it's probably a knockoff. There are a lot of that in the field. Okay, and then just when you're ready to upgrade, right? Use that Carson to use as your sketchbook. Nobody ever has to see it, right? You're just getting a good watercolor paper to do all that practicing on. Do not use the regular copier paper because as you saw, it will buckle and you won't be happy with your colors. Okay. So now that you know which watercolor paper to use, your painting experience is going to feel like so much smoother. So hit like if this has helped, subscribe for more watercolor tips, and drop a comment with your favorite brand of paper. Have a good day.